Oh, hello everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. I, of course, am Mr. Warren Hayes, and for the next couple of hours, we will be talking about professional wrestling right here on youtube.com/Mr. Warren Hayes, or on your favorite podcast application, wherever it is you decide to listen to what I have to give. Well, then it's there. And if you're hanging out there and you're wondering, well, gee, what could I do to support Warren and all this? Well, you could leave a like on this video on YouTube, or you could leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcast or a 5-star rating on Spotify. Those things help out tremendously. And if you're listening on YouTube, you can also become a member of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show channel. You get early access to a bunch of stuff, including my AEW Revolution 2025 review, which we are going to be playing here, which is going to be a part of the podcast here tonight. But members get early access to it, so they've heard it already. If not, don't worry. Here we are. You have it right here, right now. We're breaking down the entire show. Look, I'm not going to spoil anything. You can hop right to it and get to it. We're going to go through a couple of bits and bobs just beforehand. We're going to talk about Jade Cargill and Shayna Baszler, because I think it's an interesting little topic to go through, and we'll get to the main event, which is the pay-per-view review very quickly after that. But thank you all very much for being here. Without further ado, let's just get to it. Jade Cargill, Shayna Baszler had a WWE backstage conflict before Cargill's injury, says the Wrestling Observer. And we're reading this off of the Wrestling Observer Figure 4 online. Jade Cargill is said to have rubbed some people the wrong way backstage in WWE. Our own Dave Meltzer reported in Friday's edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter that Cargill and Shayna Baszler were involved in a backstage confrontation prior to Cargill's injury last November. Baszler was reportedly ready to fight Cargill until management stepped in to defuse the situation. Meltzer wrote the following: "There was a confrontation that took place a few months ago before the Cargill injury involving Cargill and Baszler. It's been confirmed by half a dozen people that it happened, but nobody went into details past Cargill had rubbed enough people in the Raw's women division the wrong way, and Baszler was wanting to fight her until management found out and calmed the situation down." Also continued, "The time frame was when they were doing Baszler and Stark versus Baszler and Cargill matches. I don't know what in particular happened other than it wasn't just one thing. And the belief is that some of this stemmed from inside the ring in those matches and some didn't." Perfect. That's classic Dave right there. You know, this whole situation comes from things that happened in the ring and also things that didn't happen in the ring. All right, Dave. Although one women's star said they believed the tension within the SmackDown side was worse than the Raw side. The last time Cargill and Baszler were in the ring together was the Battle Royal on the November 3rd episode of Raw in Saudi Arabia. There also has been several matches last summer as Cargill and Bianca Belair feuded with the Pure Vision Collective, including a triple threat match with the Unholy Union at Clash at the Castle. These names, man. Following her return at a WWE Elimination Chamber, Cargill posted a video where she stated, "There are wolves in the shape of women all around me." Chelsea Green seemingly reported on social media after, writing, "Imagine calling your coworkers wolves while demanding respect, and I'm just over here like," and she has a picture with her doggies. Hey, wait a second. I thought the WWE locker room was all smiles. I thought, we never heard anything. You never hear anything get leaked. So everyone is probably really happy. Everyone is friends, right? Paul Levesque, he doesn't run a sloppy shop like Tony Khan does. everyone stays in their lane and there's no disputes. Everyone just thinks about the collective best. What is truly best for the company, correct? This is so hard to believe. And yet, I look at this and I'm like, hell yeah. There's a pro wrestling locker room acting like a pro wrestling locker room. Of course, you all know I'm into the chaos and I love this stuff. First of all, imagine Bianca Belair, imagine Jade Cargill walking into this locker room, puffing her chest out, putting her shoulders back, walking around like she owns the place as she just walks in when she's been in the business for a cup of coffee. I can see her rubbing people the wrong way. I can see her putting on airs, especially when it comes to a lot of these women in the locker room are actually good pro wrestlers when Jade still has trouble stringing a match together, despite all the hype that exists around her, despite all the attentions she gets. Jade is still not good. And frankly, I will be shocked and stunned if she ever is. And imagine you pissing people off enough that Shayna Baszler is like, yeah, I'm gonna do something about this. That's Shayna Baszler is not someone I wouldn't want. That's someone I don't want to fuck around with. Like, and there was another line that was attributed to her. I think it was out of the Fightful report, right? Where Jade said something to the effect that that Shayna needs to go back and learn how to work. Because Fightful did a follow-up to this. They said, Fightful had asked WWE talent about the incident shortly after Jade Cargill was written off TV, but those in the locker room had been quiet. So this had been, simmering for a while. It was claimed that Cargill took issue with something that had unfolded, and the word around the locker room was that Cargill had said something to the effect that Baszler needed to learn how to work. If anything, I am impressed at the cojones this woman has to come out and judge anyone's work, much less Shayna Baszler, who is a shoot fighter and who could probably snap Jade in two within the blink of an eye. Jade wouldn't even know what hit her. Like, the amount of lack of self-awareness is just pristine. It is otherworldly. I myself am sort of taken aback at how how she decided to drop this line about Shayna Baszler, Jade Cargill. That is absolutely tremendous. That is absolutely tremendous. We're told it stemmed from the match in Scotland where Cargill tapped out in what wasn't supposed to be the finish of the match, which is interesting because someone shared a clip. I should have prepared it, but I'm not going to look for it now. But someone shared a clip of Shayna putting Jade in a rear naked choke, and Jade is literally like tapping, but the ref isn't calling it. And commentary's like, did she tap? Did she tap? But the ref's not calling it. And everyone is sort of assuming, oh, this might be the spot here where Shayna just decided to teach her a lesson here. At least one talent in the locker room mentioned that the promo where Jade returned and said the locker room was full of wolves in sheep's clothing was taken personally by a number of talent as they kept the issue between she and Baszler quiet. Cargill's absence was also the subject of heat in the locker room. Talent had heard that Cargill asked for the holiday tour off, but was told the tour was mandatory. Ah. She probably would have gone up to Tony Khan, asked for the holiday tour off, and Tony would have been like, sure. Right? But WWE runs an entirely different operation, and she doesn't have the clout. She doesn't have the clout that she had in AEW to be going around making demands. And this is the kind of shit that does indeed piss off a locker room. Where they're like, where do you get off, junior? Newbie? Coming in here making demands? That's not how it's going to work. Jade and WWE claimed that Jade was injured. Multiple talent doubt the validity of this claim because, yes, they did do the injury thing and she was taken out. She didn't do the holiday tour. Coincidence. I had heard about this. I had heard about these rumors going around that Jade maybe wasn't injured. And I'm like, I don't know about that. Everyone is standing firm that no, she really, really was indeed injured. And you're like, okay, well, we'll give it the benefit of the doubt or whatever, but because look, there's a lot of media these days that are, they just get their information fed from WWE and they don't question. So, someone could have been told, look, you don't tell media that Jade is not injured. Or that she's being taken off the tour. You just say she's injured and we're going to write her off TV and whatever the fuck. Can you imagine Jade Cargill coming in to that locker room and pissing a bunch of people off? I think it is tremendous. Tony Khan, you created a monster and you sent it over. You sent it over to the competition and now she's the competition's problem. Now they have to deal with it. Kind of makes you wonder how she was backstage in AEW, doesn't it? Because like I said, she had the clout. She had the clout in AEW to kind of do whatever she wanted. I'm not saying she did. I'm saying she had the clout to do it. She was always positioned at the top of the women's division with the TBS title, the push and the undefeated streak and whatnot. Tony liked her. Everyone kind of, she would be an attention grabber. She knew she had value. That's why she decided to, get out of AEW and go to WWE because she was like, I know I have value. And she's like, her only locker room experience was in a locker room where she really didn't have any dues to pay. You know how the old guys like to talk about paying dues and all that? There's still truth to that. There's still something very true about that. Where, she starts off in wrestling and she gets the royal treatment from the get-go, right? She never really grinded. She never went through what a lot of these people in those locker rooms have went through to get to the spot they're at. And she comes in, the boss coming in, giving off that energy, giving off that big dick energy. Let's just say it. Oh, there's a lot of people who probably didn't like that. There's probably a lot of people who are like, man, someone's got to teach you. You've got to be taken down your high horse right now. You really do. And I think that, you know what? I think it's fair. And why? And this was leaked. Why do you think this was leaked? Why do you think this airtight WWE environment, why do you think that was leaked? For the exact same reasons we're talking about it now. It's to throw some shade at Jade. There I go with my bars again. So that there's always this hanging above her where it's like, well, maybe she's not as cool as everyone thinks. Maybe it's not as cool. That's why this was leaked. Because again, look, I've argued with multiple people about this. We're like, well, if there was stuff going on backstage in WWE, we'd hear about it. No, that's not how it works. Every time anything gets leaked from any locker room, It's a wrestler who does it. This is the golden rule. It's a wrestler or, someone very close in the locker room who does it. And that person leaks the information because they have an agenda. Because they have a narrative that they need to spin, that they need to get out there for whatever reason. It could be Paul Heyman back in the day, but the dirt sheets, the wrestling media, as much as fans would like to believe that Dave Meltzer and Sean make shit up just for clicks, they don't. They get this, and they don't get their shit from the janitor, okay? They get their news from pro wrestlers who are ready to talk about something. And let me tell you, pro wrestlers like to talk. They like to gossip. They like to talk shit about other people. They really, really take a tremendous amount of pleasure in it. It happens a lot. So it's not hard to get a wrestler to talk about stuff. Sometimes they're just going to be more careful. But, something like this, in this type of situation with Jade, this is absolutely one of the, what was the term they were talking about here? This was one of the people from the locker room that, took stuff personally. One of the number of talent that took things personally. It's one of these people. Just as simple as that. So on one hand, I think it's infinitely funny that we have Jade Cargill causing, getting heat backstage. I think and the more you think about it, the more it makes sense. You're like, yeah, sure. I can see why. But it also doesn't surprise me because it's a fucking pro wrestling locker room. It's a pro wrestling locker room, and this kind of stuff happens all the time. And the only reason why people think that WWE, that it doesn't happen in WWE is because they control the output of information a lot more than they do in AEW, for instance. There you go. Interesting, but if I were her, I would avoid trying to pick a fight with Shayna Baszler. If I'm her, I'm not trying to square up with Shayna Baszler. That's a poor choice. If I'm pissing off Shayna Baszler, yeah, and I don't think Shayna Baszler is going to want to settle this in a friendly game of Warhammer 40K. I don't think. New Japan started the New Japan Cup a couple of days ago. So the tournament is well on its way, despite a major snafu on night one. Major snafu on night one. One of the ring posts broke. Not like, the cable snapped or, a turnbuckle, shot out or whatever. No, a post broke. One of their steel posts just like whomp, just completely died. And then they decided, well, it'll be time to there's nothing much we can do. It'll be time to order a new one. But they had a show. They were in Cork and Hall. They had a show to do, but they couldn't. So instead, what they did on night one, and you can watch it on New Japan World if you want. It's being referred to as the talk show night, where basically all the guys sort of got into their casual clothes and their street clothes and went and sat around and chatted. It was essentially, just a big rap session, and everyone was kissing ELP. That's essentially on the lips. That's essentially what was going on. So no wrestling on night one, but they caught up everything with night two. It was basically just all tournament matches. And as it stands right now, I'm all caught up. I would say right now, there isn't really anything standing out. now that throughout round one. But round one, year after year in the New Japan Cup, you know, there's a lot of panic that goes around it, where it's like, oh, this is awful, this is not great, and so on and so forth. The first round thing. We do that. I feel we do it every year. And the first round is never great. And once we get through that, then we can start being a little more judgmental, and things then hopefully start to pick up. So, you know, all of the round one matches are done. We've even started into some round two. We're 3 nights into the New Japan Cup, basically. These, you see the standings right now on screen. I don't think there's anything really that stands out. That was my point that I was making, right? There's nothing really that stands out aside from, I think my favorite match so far was Gabe Kidd versus Red Narita, which was on March 8th. And I gave that 4 stars. I thought it was a really strong match, and I think it was Narita's best match in New Japan since being done with being a young lion. I think it was particularly good. And look, Gabe Kidd he's on a roll. And they're clearly setting some stuff up for him. There's really, this guy is going to be pushed in a very top guy level capacity because he's just been too good. He's created an intense crowd connection with the audience. I don't think he's going to be hanging around the Bullet Club, or not the Bullet Club, because I think it's safe to say that the Bullet Club is done now. I think it's dead, and long live Bullet Club. Like, one of the things that came out of one of the big news items, I guess, that came out of the anniversary show, which again was last week, which I also watched, and I didn't think it was a very good show. We're going to skip over it. If you're wondering, I don't think it was a very good show. I think, Hiroki Goto versus Hiroshi Tanahashi is a vibes match. You're not going to get anything spectacular out of it, but if you want to see Goto, world champion Goto take down Tanahashi in this context for the first time ever, knock yourself out. I think it was the best match on the show, but that's not necessarily saying much because I think the rest of the show wasn't very good. But the one thing that did come out of that is that the unit Chaos in New Japan has officially melded into Hantai, which is the unaligned, like the general unit of New Japan, where everyone sort of automatically falls into unless they join another unit. So there's no more Chaos. Chaos is done. The legacy of Shinsuke Nakamura in New Japan is kaput at this point. And quite frankly, who cared about? Ever since Okada left, like even while Okada was still there, Chaos was kind of like a little weird. But ever since Okada left, like, there was no point to it. There was no rhyme or reason. It was time to put that one down. It was time to put it down. But in the meantime, Bullet Club is sort of like dead too, and that's fine. That's great, actually. That's something else that's outlived its necessity. And now everything has sort of devolved into a feud between House of Torture and the War Dogs, which are the Bullet Club splinter groups, which culminated on today's show where Dave Finlay defeated Evil to move on in the New Japan Cup. And there was interference in this match. They're actually doing an angle where you're not quite sure where Sonata's alliances lay. is he allied with the War Dogs or is he allied with the House of Torture? And I'm like, are we doing this with Sanada, like legitimately one of the most uninteresting guys that they have on the roster? Is this what we're doing? Is that we're giving Sanada this the old where do his allegiances lay kind of thing? Anyway, I don't have an issue with all of this falling apart. I really don't, and I don't think it's going to last in whatever. I don't think the War Dogs, House of Torture. I don't know how all of this is going to come about. We'll see how it goes. But right now, like Dave Finlay, eliminated Evil from the tournament, and Finlay's going to be moving forward. I still think Dave Finlay's winning the tournament. Yeah. So essentially, like the Gabe Kidd and Narita had that story as well. And so I remember what we were talking about. We were talking about Gabe Kidd and how great of a push he's getting. And I think the more things start moving forward with Kidd in his position right now, the more he's going to be distanced from the War Dogs eventually. I think he's going to eventually join Hantai because this is the guy that New Japan needs to get people feeling like New Japan is on fire again. Because, like I mentioned a couple of times, talking about Gabe Kidd and his matches, he gets people to chant Shin Nihon in the audience, which rarely happens. So, it all goes all the way back to Wrestle Dynasty and, the lion mark on his trunks. He's just becoming a baby face. He's not going to be able to be an asshole much longer. And I think it's going to be very advantageous for them to do that. So I'm excited. I'm excited for how this is all going to come together. Because if you look at the tournament setup right now, you see Dave Finlay next has Yuya Uemura up on the board, and I think it's safe to say that Finlay's going to move forward. Gabe is going to have to go through Taichi and Zack Sabre Jr., which I think is feasible in the idea that Gabe is going to, that Gabe is in the midst of a push. And then when we get to Dave Finlay, Gabe Kidd here, that's going to be a big, War Dog story here. And it'll be a very interesting match to keep one's eyes on. I think they're absolutely going to go for that, seeing how things are laid out here. But, I still could be wrong. My bracketology for this is all to hell anyway. So, whatever. But yeah, like so far, nothing really of note, nothing that I can sit here with my whole heart and recommend and say, hey, go off and watch this. This is a tremendous match. Like, it's been overall fine. There's been a couple of not great matches. But Callum Newman versus Tetsuya Naito was not very good. Yota Tsuji versus Evil, I thought was, just too many shenanigans of the House of Torture to make this anything remotely interesting. Like, it hasn't been. And Dave Finlay versus Evil today was essentially just a whole bunch of nonsense. I don't know. Like, it wasn't great. It's not great so far. It's fine. If you really absolutely want to watch one match out of the group, well, it's Gabe Kidd versus Narita on March 8th. That's the one you want to watch. The rest is all super skippable, and I hope it starts picking up. Man, Bolton Oleg versus Bad Luck Fale was just absolutely terrible. I didn't expect it to be this great, phenomenal match, but I did not expect it to be the dregs that it was. It was really bad. Like Fale is just, he's just horrible now. And you know, that, consider that when knowingly he was never, you know, a really great pro wrestler, far from it. But now it's just like, oh, Jesus Christ. Like, it's really bad. It's really, really bad. And so what do we got? What's coming up next? What do we have? What do we have coming up next? On the 12th, on March 12th, which is tomorrow at the time that we're, oh yes, he's absolutely a worse pro wrestler than you, darling. Yes, yes, he is. Coming up tomorrow, we have the aforementioned Gabe Kidd and Taichi match. We also have Shota Umino versus Great-O-Khan. Shota Umino is going to make his first appearance since having his head shaved, or shaving his own head. That's going to be his first appearance. So, you know, as I mentioned in my preview to this, I think he's going to come out to an entirely different look. I wouldn't even be surprised if he heals it up a little bit. Maybe he'll even be inserted into this War Dog House of Torture stuff, but Shota Umino is coming out repackaged. Whatever way you think it is, we'll find out, but he's been, you know, radio silent, hasn't been posting any pictures. They're saving the surprise for the return, so that's going to be a big talking point tomorrow. And I think Great-O-Khan Shota should be fun. I think Gabe Kidd and Taichi should be tremendous. That's a match I'm looking forward to. Then we go to the 14th, where we're going to have Drilla Maloney taking on Boltin Oleg. And that's, against TJP, pardon me. Yeah, Drilla's, there's the story there, but Drilla's going to plow through TJP. And Boltin Oleg will be facing Shingo Takagi again on the 14th. And that's where we're at right now, right? 12, 13, 14. There you go. So that's where we're at. And now it is time to review AEW Revolution 2025, the big pay-per-view that happened on March 9, 2025, from the old Staples Center that we're forced to call Crypto.com Arena, Los Angeles, California. A tremendous show. I don't think anyone is popping into this review saying, "Oh, gosh, darn it! I wonder if Warren liked it." No, this was a fantastic show. Just from top to bottom. Maybe not top to bottom. Maybe, but yeah, almost the top to the bottom. It's just full of extraordinary, great pro wrestling. Just how I like it. You know, hard hitting. The theme here, I think, if there was ever to be a theme to this review, because, you know, there's not, but if there was ever to be a theme to this review, it would be something to the effect of, you know, hard hitting, maybe stiff, maybe, you know, brutal, because that's what this pay-per-view was. The matches that the matches that really hit were all incredibly hard fought, hard working, brutal affairs. Yeah, I think that's the way you approach this show. That's how I'm going to remember this show, of just how incredibly physical it was, and not just because of the matches that, you know, drew blood and where people were maiming each other and the other and their dance partners. Even some of the matches that did not achieve those goals were still extremely hard, extremely hard hitting, tremendous affairs. Look, another year, another great AEW Revolution. You know, we might, some people may still trick themselves into believing that Double or Nothing is the big tentpole pay-per-view for AEW because it was, you know, the first one and so on and so forth. But you can trick yourselves all you want. You can create whatever headcanon you want. Yeah, or you can follow whatever AEW wants you to believe, but the true seal of quality for this show, this promotion, excuse me, the true seal of quality is Revolution. And you go back, you watch, and you'd be hard pressed to disagree with this. It's an extremely consistent pay-per-view, and I honestly think that off of the heels of last year's show, which I think truly cemented in a lot of people's minds how great these Revolution shows have been. I think that there was a concerted effort to stack this show in a way that it would generate a lot of buzz and lay the groundwork for an incredible show. We don't have any Sting retirements this year, which is absolutely fine, right? There's no other Stings around to retire. But nonetheless, this show absolutely held its own and got people excited. It got people so excited that according to WrestleTix, 11,322 tickets were distributed for the show on March 9. And this is not the final count. I'm recording this on Monday on the 10th, so the day after. So then there still hasn't been a final count that has been reported by WrestleTix. But nonetheless, a lot of people were wondering if we were going to make it to 10,000. I figured we were going to make it to 10,000 when we were previewing it earlier, or late last week, I should say, on the Dynamite review a little bit. And I had my own little preview on stream as well, over on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes, if you're wondering where those streams happen. And I didn't necessarily think that we were going to get that we were going to cross over the 11,000 threshold, and yet there we are. And you could probably make an argument that we're going to get real close to 12,000, and that's tremendous. It's going to be the second biggest drawing Revolution pay-per-view ever. It's going to be it's likely going to be one of AEW's biggest live gates this year. As it stands right now, only All in Texas is bigger at this stage, has more tickets sold, distributed, excuse me. There's a chance. I mean, I don't have the foresight to tell you what's going to happen, in AEW creatively over the next few months, but maybe we're going to hit a show where it's, we might start getting closer to this. But this is absolutely going to be a top gate, top attendance of the year, right? And for reason. And I think the reason for this is because of how really good the build was to this show. Talked about it on the preview. I don't want to overextend on this one. I talked about it quite a bit. I talked about it on the Dynamite reviews and so on and so forth. But the build to this pay-per-view has been impeccable, I should say. I was going to say practically perfect, and I dialed myself back a little bit. I said, "Hey, it's we're not ready yet for such hyperbole, Warren. Take it down a notch." No, but I think that it was an impeccable build. All of the matches that were in this that were on this pay-per-view all had very clear, very distinct stories. A lot of them were being built for weeks, for months, in some circumstances, a year or so. It was just a really good exercise in showing that great stories and great wrestling really can go hand in hand. That just because you do one well doesn't mean that you have to abandon the other, right? And you don't necessarily have to just exclusively lean into the stories, basically. Just as you don't have to clearly just lean into the great matches. I think a great combination of look. I think you need great matches to really sustain a pay-per-view, get interest, get people watching, and get excited as the pay-per-view goes down. But you need build, you need stories well interwoven. to get to the point where the show in its build and how we get there gets people excited. And I think it was successful in that. And I think the numbers that were picked up in Los Angeles at the crypto.com arena were indicative of that to a significant degree, I would say. I mean, no surprise that this was a good house. AEW pay-per-views still have the ticket buyer consumer confidence that a lot of the TV tapings have lost. So there's no big surprise here. So why don't we just start with the show? We'll start with let's just get this out of the way, because I also watched a bit of the preview. There were all sorts of celebrities, stars that were there. I don't know if at some point I was kind of thinking of the all the stars meme, right? Because there was a bit of that. But nonetheless, there's some people here. I'm like, okay, I don't know who these people are. Like, Young Gravy. I don't know what Young Gravy is, who he is, I should say. Aside that he was very tall and looked like he was wearing a shirt that belonged to Super Dave Osborne. That reference may have just aged me, and I don't really care. But there was a bit of a through line from the pre-show into the main show, and that is the actors from the Queen of the Ring movie that AEW has been promoting quite a bit, because Tony Storm had a role in it, a few other people as well. They're just, I can't think of them right now. And there's Naomi's in there as well, Camille. Look, a few things just slipping my mind here. And so they had the director, Ash Alvidson, who was hanging around there. And we also had Kelly Berglund, who turns out, I didn't realize this, turns out she's also been on heels. So she has, she was asked that somebody, I think it was Renee who asked her, it's like, would you like to get into the ring sometime? And she was like, yeah, I'd like to wrestle actually sometime. And I'm like, okay, well, this makes sense. She's doing the heels thing, the show, and now she's doing the movie, and she's getting excited at the idea of doing Hurricane Rana's, in just one take. So good for her. And they also had Damaris Lewis, who caused a little stir. When she was ringside during the main show, where she just flat out outed the business. Where she said, hang on, do I have the quote here? I think I have the quote. I have it here. One thing I learned about pro wrestlers, one thing I learned about pro wrestlers, you all know you're going to win before anybody else does. So thank you for teaching me that. And, I had a chuckle when that happened. I was in a couple of group chats and I was like, kayfabe, please. It's like, it's just funny. I don't mind. But there's some people who took a little offense to that. Some people somehow saw this as exposing the business. In the year 2025, essentially like 30 years since Vince McMahon himself exposed the business all by himself. So, it's not that, I don't know why people are going hard on her case, and I feel bad for her, because she probably found out how fucking insane pro wrestling fans are. She probably found out like yesterday and today on the Monday, getting DMs on her Instagram from wackadoo wrestling fans, probably most likely, probably because she somehow said something that everyone with a brain knows, unless you're a true to form child that has never been smartened up to what's going on, unless you are legitimately a child who still believes in Santa Claus, and the Tooth Fairy, there's no shock or surprise in what she said, and yet somehow This created a disturbance in the force that is kayfabe. My God. Sometimes, pro wrestling fans, I love you, but most of the time, you're fucking embarrassing. Poor girl. She probably meant, she was probably just, I don't know what she was trying to say. Like, I don't want to put words in my mouth. Like, I don't know what she was trying to say with the quote. You taught me that you all are going to win before you're going to win before anyone else does, right? I don't know what she was trying to say. Was she trying to be inspiration? What's the inspiration in that? I don't know. Like, this is the same woman who was saying, I think in the paper, in the preview, she was saying, everyone is so lovely, right? I like this bit of in the pre-show. She's standing, I'm pretty sure it's her. I don't think it was the Kelly Berglund lady. I think it's Damaris Lewis, who is like, all the people we've met, all the wrestlers we've met, the one thing that I take away from this is that everyone is so nice. And you kind of hear, you've got Jeff Jarrett, okay? You've got Jeff Jarrett, you've got Renee, you've got RJ City, and of course, what's his name? Paul Walter Hauser, Paul Walter Hazer, Paul Hunter, you know who the guy I'm talking about, the MLW guy. Paul Walter Hauser. There you go. And they're all standing there, and this poor girl says, everyone in wrestling is so nice, and you really hear like Renee go, just grunt. You hear, I think it has to be Jeff Jarrett, who sort of chuckles, right? He goes, and then she goes, well. And then she catches herself. She goes, well, why? It's like, well, the people in the makeup chairs are very lovely. Like, okay, there you go. Oh, man, she just got a crash course in the business. That poor girl. She just didn't know what was coming to her. Anyway, people made too much of a big deal out of this. So that was, I just wanted to get that out of the way so that we don't cover it, when we're getting into the into the nitty gritty and stuff. I have decided for this review, I'm going to start with the stuff that I didn't like about the show, because I want to talk about the stuff about the stuff that I liked uninterrupted. I want and there's very little that I disliked as opposed to everything that I did like. So why don't we just bulldoze that shit out of the way? Besides, one of them is the lead. There's one of these things that, the main event is one of these two things. You can't, that's the lead of anyone who's doing a review. You have to start with the main event because of how remarkably terrible it was. Just how remarkably awful the main event of this otherwise great show was. And of course, we're talking about Jon Moxley defeating Adam Copeland to retain the AEW world title. But I'm saying, Jon Moxley defeated Adam Copeland, but he also turns out defeated Christian Cage. This match turned into a three-way match. And I'm assuming that most of you who are watching this or listening to this, whatever your mode of consumption is, the one you prefer, I'm assuming that most of you have already seen the match, right? And you've seen that this match started off with an extremely mild crowd that stayed extremely mild throughout. Polite claps, but a crowd that I felt wanted to get into the match because Moxley healed it up as good as he could to try and get the crowd into this. He really did his best. And yet the crowd, and when he did, this is the point I'm trying to make, when he did get the crowd invested, when he did get reactions, you could tell, like they were ready. They were ready to boo. They were ready to tell him, to hit the bricks. They wanted to get invested in it, the match, but they never did, because whatever these guys had planned for this match, these guys being Copeland and Moxley, whatever they had ready, they clearly stuck to this plan. That this is what I'm assuming, of course, but years of following pro wrestling and so on and so forth. I'm not saying I'm absolutely right, but my gut tells me that they had a plan for this match. And by God, they stuck to it. Regardless of what was going on backstage, not backstage, front and center for the past, for the 3 or 4 previous matches before that, the steel cage match just before that, or, Takeshita and Ospreay, Takeshita and Omega just before that. And then, Tony Storm and Mariah May. They didn't change their game plan in any way. They stuck to whatever had been agreed on. They stuck to whatever had been produced. I don't know what the term exactly you need to use here, but they stuck to it. And they didn't change in regards to what had happened previously. And I think that was a big mistake. Sticking to whatever they were doing, whatever they were planning, doing basically, a match that was chock full of main event rest holds, that would make Randy Orton, salivate. I think doing that was a terrible idea. Someone, even in the middle of this match, one of these two guys should have called an audible, whatever, just say, okay, we got to switch things up, follow my lead kind of thing, and then just go nuts. And the unfortunate thing is that everything that probably would have worked in any other circumstance probably would have been pretty good. But look, I'll give you an example. Straight out the gate, or soon out the gate, Mox and Cope are throwing forearms on each other, right? All throughout the night, we have seen people throwing strikes at each other that were stiff, that were blistering. What we had here was Mox doing his best, but Adam Copeland's WWE style preventing him from going really hard with those strikes, because he has never let me say that again. In the 20, 25 years that Adam Copeland has been performing, 30 some years, whatever it is, right? He has spent all of his time in WWE doing their style of strikes. So when it comes down to it and you're doing a strike battle with someone, your strikes look, pillowy soft because that's the only way you've learned to do them. Well, I just saw two guys throw themselves off the top of a cage. Earlier in the evening, I just saw two women tear at each other until they were gushing blood from their foreheads. Like, Jon Moxley pulls out a couple of chairs. And God bless commentary, who were really trying to find some spark in this, and, Excalibur getting really, really excited for the most mundane things like pulling out two chairs. But in the context, I was like, I can only shrug. I'm like, I get it. All right. It is Jon Moxley pulling out chairs. Oh my. This other match, they had guys stabbing each other with a screwdriver. I don't know what to tell you. You know what? You're like, it does. It had a circumstance in which another scenario should have happened. The context of the rest of the evening absolutely impacted what happened in the main event. That I think that's absolutely a reality. But these two guys, these two veterans, multiple decades in this business, both of them should have realized this. They should have found another path here, unless this is absolutely the match that they wanted to do. And if so, that's even more unforgivable. Maybe they're like, no, we're going to shock and awe this audience with this, with this, and I'm not afraid to say it, this WWE style main event, because that's exactly what this is, or was, a WWE style main event. This was a spot on, motion promotion, bloodline main event where it turns out everyone was just sitting around waiting for the ref bump so that Jey Uso and Jimmy Uso and Solo Sikoa and the Gorillas of Destiny could all run in, do their little run-ins to lead to the finish, except the bloodline was replaced by Jay White and Wheeler Yuta and Christian Cage. Christian Cage with the cash-in. Now, if there is one positive that we can absolutely 100% circle, underscore, raise our hands, raise the roof, it's Christian Cage finally doing the cash-in gimmick and and getting rid of that sword of Damocles that has been hanging above the main event scene in AEW for like 8 months, 9 months, a zillion years, it feels. This is the main positive. It is the one thing that we can extract from all of this. We're like, finally, it's done. We will never have to deal with this Christian Cage cash-in again. And I hope on top of that AEW has realized that the cash-in gimmick stinks and that it handicaps your creative, because you always have to leave room for that. You always have to shoehorn it in somehow to make sure that no one challenges, so no one goes after a pay-per-view and says, well, where was Christian Cage? And because that's all people focus on. It's not a good story. It's not interesting. It's not interesting when WWE does it. WWE has the Money in the Bank gimmick has been overwrought, overdone. It's bad now. It's so far away from what it was designed to do. It's preposterous at this point. And it's theirs, most importantly. It's theirs. They being AEW, should not do it, because they should have the confidence to say, well, we don't need to do the cash-in gimmick because we can do our own things, such as put on this type of pay-per-view, which is something WWE isn't capable of doing. Doesn't have the guts, they have the talent, but they just don't have the guts or the courage or the creativity or whatever it's missing for them to put on a pay-per-view like we got on Sunday night. They're going to do their 4-5 match specials, right? Which are all going to be very mundane. You might, if you're lucky, one's going to crack away from the rest, and it'll be a nice little home run, or at the very least a solid double. And we're going to call that a success, right? And we're going to be like, oh, there you go. But that's all they're able to do. See, I often talk about on the Dynamite reviews, and I'm not the only one. This is not, necessary. This is something that I also hear other people talk about and have the same thoughts. So, it's not by any means, not me by any means saying, oh, this is my original thought. But I do often talk about on the review about what AEW can do to distinguish itself from WWE, to be different. And the more they try, to employ trickery or, gimmicks or, whatever they do, whatever AEW does that WWE already does, and in many cases more successfully, AEW always seems to come across as doing it cheaper because the comparison is going to be 1-to-1. If AEW focuses on things that they are able to do that WWE cannot, that's where they have the opportunity to shine. And consistently, from the start of this promotion, the one thing that AEW can do that WWE cannot or does not want to is put on tremendous wrestling matches. It's great wrestling. That's AEW's signature. And that's what they should stick to, because that's a thing that WWE can't do. WWE does the gimmick, the Money in the Bank. It's all theirs. And, I can even argue for New Japan as well. New Japan shouldn't do the fucking briefcase thing either. But that's that's for another podcast. Let WWE do the cash-ins. That's fine. Let them do that. Find your own things. And you could tell the cash-in was a hamper to the creative of the main events. You felt like there was always this thing that needed to be shoehorned into every main event situation, into every main event match. Somehow Christian Cage had to be there, just so that people wouldn't complain. Well, where's Christian Cage? What's he doing? I would have dropped this, quite frankly. This match was terrible. Back to the match itself. The match was terrible. And some people will try to tell you this was fine. Some people might even dare tell you it was good, but it was not. It was slow. It was, and I think the context made it even worse. And when I say the context, I'm not just talking about what happened on the show specifically. I'm talking about, I'm not just talking about the violence of the other matches. Of very specific matches, I should say. Because there are other matches that were on this card that did not resort to the blood or, the maiming, and were excellent matches on top of that. And, Strickland and Ricochet, for instance. Just and MJF Hangman. And we'll get, of course, to those matches. We'll get around to them. But those were excellent matches nonetheless that were able to rise to the occasion without the need of ultraviolence, right? The context that makes Mox versus Copeland so disappointingly bad is that the build to it, like pretty much every match on this card, was very, very good and warranted a big time finish to this feud. I would even go as far as to say that Mox and Copeland was probably the build that was the most impressive, because it started and it was terrible. It was not good. People were not excited about main event Adam Copeland in 2025. Or if not excited, they had significant reservations. How about that? Or they thought the build was just a complete disaster, which it was at first. At first, this match, the build to this match was really not, the stuff with FTR, and they were still trying to figure out the Death Rider stuff. But Grand Slam comes around. They do that match. It's good, solid angle. And week after week after that, just a solid, unequivocally strong build to lead us to this match. So the fact that they were able to pivot and make something good out of these lemons was phenomenal. So if anything, this match deserved the same type of blow off as many of the other great feuds that were on the show, but they being Mox and Copeland didn't rise to the occasion. They just didn't. This match was not good. It was slow, uninteresting, and of course, I'm not trying to water down the fact that it probably suffered because of the incredible quality and violence of the undercard that preceded it. But what I'm trying to say is that there were other there were other incredible matches on this show that did not need to resort to, insane levels of violence and managed to create excellent matches. So to me, it's a crutch on the match, the quality on the card, only to a degree. I think then there's a lot of responsibility that goes on both these guys that did not live up to this, that did not rise to the occasion. They just didn't. They didn't rise to the occasion. And look, Christian, when he comes in, I don't know why he's in a hoodie and hidden. It's like, just it doesn't matter. Like you're gonna reveal yourself 5 seconds later. It's really not that big a deal. And when he comes in and he signs his gimmick, the contract, and then he gets into the ring, he gets choked out almost immediately by Mox. Mox just effectively kills him in the ring, right? And I'm like, okay, so now this is very transparent where, Adam Copeland is not losing this match. Where for some reason, we have to protect Adam Copeland. And I don't understand why. I don't understand why the world heavyweight champion, Jon Moxley, a guy who is, in my mind, just as much of an AEW original as, Britt Baker is, as Kenny Omega is. This is a guy who's been there from the start, who helped define this company, who was an MVP for this company. And I don't know why he just can't lay out the biggest competition that he's had so far. I've hammered this home. Mox has not had a good run so far. Orange Cassidy, God bless him, but Orange Cassidy's time as a top guy, they missed that window completely during the last Mox feud. Completely missed it. He's a mid-card guy, and that will be his perception moving forward. So no one was perceiving him as a top guy. The three guys, the Jay White, Hangman, and Orange Cassidy match at World's End. Again, no one was buying that. No one was buying that was going to be a big deal. It was what it was. But again, not necessarily something that Mox can hang his hat on. His next challenger is Copeland, a guy who no one in the fan base thinks that Copeland is a main event guy for AEW. That is oh yes, absolutely. No, he was rejected almost from the start. Why couldn't he beat him? Why couldn't Jon Moxley just straight up beat the guy? There wouldn't be no harm, no foul. What is the big plan for Adam Copeland? What could be bigger than a main event match that didn't work out? What's the next thing? Well, it's probably going to be a feud with Jay White with the way things are going, right? But what's the next big, what are we protecting him for? He just lost his his world championship title opportunity. It doesn't matter. I don't think Adam Copeland's aura would have suffered if he had lost the match. I really don't know what this was about. I really don't understand what this was about. I don't get it. But then, and I got to give some props to friend of the show, member of the Discord, all around great guy, DJ Convoy, who for the past couple of weeks has been, on the offense regarding me and my own Adam Copeland thoughts. And I think I have changed course here. I look at this now very objectively, and I'm like, Adam Copeland is, he's not giving back. He's being extremely selfish ever since he came into AEW. I mean, listen, here's the thing. Listen to this. Okay, if we break down his matches that he's had since coming into AEW, okay, on December 6th, I believe, 2023, Christian Cage defeats Adam Copeland, sure, but there was some outside interference on that match. So it was not a clean win. World's End 2023, Christian Cage defeats Adam Copeland after Adam Copeland wins the TNT title with a cash-in. So again, not a clean loss. And then we get to AEW Revolution 2025. Jon Moxley ultimately ends up choking out Christian Cage. So once again, Adam Copeland does not lose clean. He has not lost clean. He's lost clean 3 times in AEW. He has lost 3 times in AEW. Not one of these times has been clean. Do you want to know when is the last time he lost clean? Do you want to know when the last time Adam Copeland lost clean? It was May 12, 2023, when AJ Styles pinned him in a 3-way match. It was Styles, Edge, and Rey Mysterio. That's the last time. That is the last time Adam Copeland was pinned clean in a pro wrestling ring. Before that, you had to go all the way back to September 10, 2021, when Seth Rollins beat him clean. I don't know what we're protecting. I honestly don't. I honestly do not. And I really believe now when people like Convoy say, he's not a generous wrestler. He, for some reason, he's thinking about himself and whatnot. Tony says Cope is a great locker room leader, but, that's great. But Tony also says that he's better at telling people, no, we're not doing this. Well, now, Tony, you should be able to put your big boy pants on and tell this guy here, this guy who, yes, you are paying a lot of money, but who has not created any new business for your company, is not a quarter-hour mover. He's not an observable ratings mover. I don't think he's a draw. A guy who was completely unproven in all of those spots. You absolutely could tell him, no, listen, my guy, Jon Moxley, who has been here from the start, who has stuck his neck out for this company, who has pushed back vacations with his lovely family just to make sure that we stay afloat because I asked him to. He's going to get the win over you because he needs to look strong. I don't know why we're protecting Copeland. I really don't. So Tony, if I'm Tony Khan, again, I'm telling our boy Cope here, it's time for you to put the other guys over, Adam. It's time. You're going to feud with Jay White. You're going to put Jay White over. Jay White is not going to be your little buddy. He's not going to come across as your little buddy. You're going to put him over. You're going to start laying flat on your back for the guys who still have years to give to this business and to my promotion specifically. I hereby announce that we are on Cope Watch. That's right. We are on Cope Watch on the Mr. Warren Hayes show. We are going to keep an eye on Adam Copeland and his shenanigans moving forward because as much as I enjoyed his work on the mid card with the TNT title, the more things are moving ahead here, the less I'm compelled by his overall work, especially if he wants to be in the upper crust scenario. If he wants to hang with the top guys in the company, I'm going to be keeping an eye on this. And just the thing that happens here, right after the match, you have the swerve balcony dive, right? Which everyone goes apeshit for. It was cool and it felt cool. It was cooler than anything that happened in the match. And one of the themes that AEW has started to figure out, on top of the theme of, everyone beating the shit out of each other throughout this pay-per-view, one of the themes of the show is AEW figuring out that the people, the fans, want to see people they like in the top spots in the company. That's why we got all these great matches with people that AEW fans actually want to see. That's why we didn't have fucking, Private Party on the show. We had people that the AEW fan base actually wants, And there was one outlier, and that was Adam Copeland. And we were sort of proved right here. We did not want him necessarily because he's not great and the output was not great. But then you throw Swerve into the mix. Now everyone's excited and gets a bigger reaction than anything that happened in the match. This was one of the absolute worst big time, big show main events that I have seen in a while. This really was bad. It was a terrible, confusing, slow-paced, uninspired mess in the ring, compounded by all the context that I talked about, that this match should have been better and deserved to be better. You put that all together and you have the recipe for really one of the worst matches that you're going to see in a main event all year. Guaranteed. I gave this 1 3/4 stars. I don't go that low often. That was bad. The other thing that I didn't like on the show was the Hurt Syndicate defeating the Outrunners to retain the AEW World Tag Team title. This wasn't good either. This wasn't very good. I understand what this match was about. Okay, the Hurt Syndicate. They're big, tough, angry dudes. They want to destroy everything. They hurt people is what I'm told. And that's what they did. And that's what they being AEW, that's what they want to do with them, right? But the way this was structured, right? The Outrunners had a lot of offense in this one, which doesn't quite make sense. I think this build was made to give us the impression that the Outrunners were going to get steamrolled. And it wasn't exactly that. I mean, this was a sub 10-minute match, don't get me wrong. It's not as if these two teams went 15 minutes plus against each other. The Outrunners had offense. The Outrunners had, they held their own against the Hurt Syndicate to a degree. And, while I kind of think, I know there's some people who said, oh, they should have just ran through them. I kind of agree, but also at the same time, I don't mind if there's some retaliation, if there's some resistance by the opposing team in this circumstance, in this type of match where there's one team that is clearly positioned to be dominant. I don't mind if there's like underdog comebacks and whatnot, but the Outrunners showed to me in this match that they are not ready for this kind of spotlight. They were slow. They were unconfident. I find sloppy even at times. It just adds to what I say, what we've been talking about. That I'm part of this group that believes that the Outrunners should not be pushed, and not because they're not an entertaining act, because they're not cool guys. It's just because they have a nice little spot on this roster, which is perfectly suited for them. And anything else above that station is going to, it's not going to do them any favors, right? There's a working standard, a relatively high working standard in AEW, especially when it comes to the tag team division. And it has sunk people before in this company. People who were maybe very entertaining or very cool, but just didn't have the work to go along with it. And I think the Outrunners showed, they were exposed here, that they just don't have these chops just yet to be, dare I use the word pillars? Maybe not even that strong, just being, competitive on the roster. How about that? You have to be careful with the Outrunners. And I swear to God, I've been proven right in this circumstance. Do not push the Outrunners. There's really no point, not at this stage, and maybe not at any stage. And you know what? That's fine. You don't need the main event push necessarily. You don't need the big, not the main event push in the terms of, in the case of tag teams, but you don't need the big tag team push to get them to get them over or whatnot, or to put them in that situation. They're already overdoing their little shenanigans. And ultimately, that's the best thing. And you know, if there's one thing I can say about this match, is that the last 2 minutes or so I thought were tremendous. And I wish the whole match would have been the last 2 minutes. But this was a 9:15 quarter-hour collision match on a Saturday night. This is what this was. There's really nothing to it. I gave that. What did I give this match? Oh, I gave this a 2. 2 stars for me. So we got all this stuff that I disliked the most about the show. Now we can talk about all the stuff that I liked about the rest of the show. And we are going to start by talking about Toni Storm successfully retaining the AEW Women's World Championship against Mariah May in the Hollywood ending match. I love this match. I loved it so much. They went extremely hard very quickly. Look, here's, you often hear about, oh, this is a grudge match. This is it's so personal and whatnot. We all know the story of these two. If this had started off with a collar and elbow, I would have screamed, but it didn't. In fact, Mariah May, who had already made her entrance, went right for Toni Storm as Toni was coming out. So she was still at the top of the ramp, and Mariah May's just like, that's it, we're done. And she goes straight forward. And that right there, I'm like, there we go. You've already won me. All you have to do is hold on. I'm on your side now. All you got to do is hang on to me a little while longer. And Jesus Christ, it's this match rule. This was absolutely phenomenal. And shortly thereafter, after they start fighting, Toni Storm power bombs Mariah May off the stage through a table. And are we barely 2 minutes in at this point? Okay. And I'm like, okay, Jesus Christ, they want to go. They're ready to go. And one of the things that I was concerned about, that I talked about on the preview, and that I talked about to anyone who wanted to hear me talk about it, I was concerned of the level of violence that we were going to get here, because they had promised blood and murder, and then killing the other one. And so it's like my expectations as far as violence went was extremely high, like through the roof. Everything was so high. Like, I'm like, they can't get away with just like a neat little plunder match. This has to be violent. And especially in the context of AEW, where we are used to having these extremely violent grudge matches, like they can't falter here. If they falter, this is going to stink. Jesus Christ, they really didn't. So they get to the ring, and then they start, they start bleeding, and there is so much blood. There's so much. I think Toni Storm was kind of surprised with the amount of blood that was draining from her. I think she might have cut herself a little deeper, but I think she herself was kind of like taken aback. I think she kind of looked at what happened and was like, okay, well, this Muda scale is kind of beyond me at this point. It was just awesome. And they're doing Taipei death matches, wrapping their fists in tape and then into some glass. I'm like, what? Holy fuck. Holy fuck. Then they're cracking champagne bottles into their, nether regions. All throughout these callbacks, right? Because the champagne bottles and the shoe, and tons of callbacks to the entirety of their feud. And they're kicking out of their finishers. This was everything I hoped for, and then some. And the more this match went on, the more the violence escalated, deservingly so, because this was a story, this was a tale that deserved this kind of insane, wild fucking match that we got. And I was cheering, I was squealing, I adored it. This is easily, for me, a 5-star match. So easily. And I do have some afterthoughts. I'm trying to organize them in my head right now because there's a lot. The thing that connected the most was how proportionate the violence was with the story. Now, if you listen to the MrWarrenHayes show's Dynamite reviews, you know that I was very off and on when it comes to the Toni Storm, Mariah May stuff. And I would even go as far as to say that for most of it, I didn't care for it. It wasn't my favorite, especially in the era where Toni Storm was doing a lot of shtick in the ring. I don't mind wrestling gimmicks as long as the gimmicks are not preventing great matches in the ring. And you've got Toni Storm, who is one of the best women's wrestlers on the planet right now, and it has been for a couple of years. And she's preventing herself from going all out and doing great things because she's nutty, she has amnesia, she has a split personality, she's doing shit with Luther and all that bullshit, right? So I was not a fan of that. I wasn't a fan of Mariah May's tenure as world champion either. I think that she showed that she has a lot of her strengths and her charisma came from her interactions with Toni Storm. And that's okay. There are just people with which you gel with more naturally than others in any working situation, in any relationship, whatever that. So that's just normal. And if you have someone with whom you can gel like that, well, that's also not very common. So good on them for having that kind of chemistry with each other, right? But it just really, there's a lot of this build that wasn't for me. But or that I think wasn't very good either. Just straight out. I'm on record. I talked about how I thought the aftermath of the shoe attack was very poorly done, and the follow-up was, the bad follow-up on that was, one of AEW's trademarks, right? Just doing bad follow-ups, and I didn't think it was very good. But I can understand why this match requires a big payoff like it does here. I understand why you go hard on this and why the level of violence that we got was proportionate to everything that happened, because they nonetheless told this story quite well, even though the execution sometimes wasn't great. The story in and about itself worked, right? So when they got to that point, and when we got to the match, and especially in the last couple of weeks when they were hyping the match, I was like, this cannot. There's a certain expectation that has been set to me by the wrestlers themselves, and I have to compare this to a recent match that I watched that had the same type of vibe to it, which was Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn at Elimination Chamber 2025. Where the whole build was how much they hate each other and they're going to destroy each other and they're going to kill each other and it's going to be violent and vile. And it turned out to be one of the tamest WWE plunder matches you could have seen in a while, where just extremely boring and nothing. And, the commentary's trying to sell us on the fact that Kevin Owens is going too strong on Sami Zayn, doing power bombs on the apron suddenly makes Kevin Owens a lunatic and a psychopath. Okay, then. That's an example of a story or of a match that didn't live up to the hype, that didn't live up to the expectation. This was the complete opposite. You set the bar high and it was delivered. And despite how crazy these two women were with each other, and despite how hard it went, and the visuals, I mean, there's this one visual where they're doing the overhead cam. I think it's the best use of this overhead cam that they have ever done, they being AEW, pronouns pal. They did the one visual of Toni Storm flat on her back, and she is like she's stained with blood all over her body, her gear, her legs, her face. Of course, her face was just completely disgusting. And she's lying flat on her back, and they're zooming out, and the more it zooms out, the more it progresses, like all of the signs of war just all over her. And I'm like, Jesus Christ, this fucking rules. I was taken aback at the visual. So it was an effort, and it was a top tier effort from the wrestlers and from production to get this across. It absolutely was phenomenal. It's a match that delivered on that level. And I think the reason why it worked so well is one of the reasons that it worked so well is the amount of time that they had. They went just shy of 13 minutes. And I don't think it should have gone any longer, because they sprinted through destroying each other. They didn't do a marathon. They just went so incredibly hard from the get-go that the pace that they maintained, the pace of violence in this match, always kept you gasping, on your toes. There's always something happening. They'd rest a bit, but then they'd come right back with something else. They would always have something more to add every time. And the pace, because it was such a shorter match than a lot of the big time matches that we're going to talk about had, I think it was a net positive. I think if this had gone too long, it would have been to the detriment of the vibe of this match. And the vibe was immaculate for this one. And it's rare you have this circumstance in which, they're throwing everything at each other, and it's brutal and it's violent, and all you have is, but everything connects on an emotional level to just put this match over, and especially on me, a guy who has not been sold on this feud for its entirety. This is a high point. It's a high point of the year for AEW. It's a high point on both of these ladies' careers. You have to wonder, like right now, right now, there are two women in North America who are the best women's pro wrestlers in North America right now. And they're both in AEW. And you can make an argument for both, in my opinion. Toni Storm and Mercedes Moné, in case you're wondering. And I honestly don't see who else elsewhere who is on the level that these two women are on. I really don't. Mercedes is out there, and we're going to talk about Mercedes, but having these incredible, stylistically different, and hard-hitting, incredible matches. And Toni Storm is combining her high skill level and her wrestling IQ with emotion and visceral feeling. That great visceral feeling that is awesome when a pro wrestling match taps into. Where you just feel like this grit, this connection going with it, right? Look at the rest of the roster. Look at the rest of the roster in the other company. Try to tell me who is on their level right now. Who is on the same level as these two women are? A lot of you are going to say Athena, but I'm going to tell you, I'm excited for Athena to break out of that cocoon so that we can see what she can do on these main stages. Because yeah, she went to Stardom. She had a great showing. Don't get me wrong. Athena's Athena's a tremendous pro wrestler. But you look at these outputs that Monet has had since last September, the fall. She has been absolutely on a roll. And now with Toni Storm being back and doing Toni Storm things, most importantly, she's absolutely been phenomenal. A lot of people, this might be maybe my most controversial take though, because as much as I love this match, I know there is a groundswell of opinion out there saying the women should have main evented. And I believe, since we're talking a lot about context in this pay-per-view so far, and where things are and how they fall on, where they're placed and how things all come together, I think this match benefited from being in the spot it was on. And I believe if they had gone to the main event, if they had been given the main event spot, this match would have probably been longer. They would have probably tried to do some, main event spectacular. They would have tried some main event gimmickry. Let's put it that way, okay? And I'm not so sure it would have been as successful as where it was, which was nonetheless fourth from the top. We're in the business end of the show at this point. We just got rid of Lashley and the Outrunners, Benjamin and the Outrunners. Don't forget Shelton. And just got rid of those. And then after that, it was just like, it's the business end of the show. Everyone was expecting something good, just not this great. Should it have main evented? I don't know. I don't think so. It could have. Would it have been better? Look, it's an exercise in futility, of course, because it didn't happen and we have no way of knowing unless there's an alternate timeline that I could travel to where this match did main event the show. So there's no real way of knowing. So I understand that this is pretty futile, but I see no argument for this match being in the main event because it was so successful in the spot it was in. It was in the absolute perfect spot with all the elements around it just coming together to make it feel special. I don't know if I would have done anything different. Anyway, 5 stars. Great match. I'm convinced this one is sticking around in my top 10 until the end of the year. Unless there's good luck. Good luck to everything else. I'm sure this is one of my top matches of the year. It was tremendous. All right, let's keep this ball rolling. Kenny Omega defeated Kensuke Takeshita to become the new AEW International Champion. This was the match, by the way, that followed Mariah May and Toni Storm. So good on them. Good on the boys here. And I think anyone else I would have been worried. I think anyone else I would have been concerned. But I wasn't. Because it's Kenny and Takeshita. Kenny is one of the greatest to ever do it. Takeshita is one of the best wrestlers on planet Earth right now. He's easily a top 10. And the more things are going, the more it's starting to feel like a top 5. I don't know what to tell you. He's incredible. He's absolutely incredible. And in this match, these two dudes decided to have themselves a Japanese Puro epic style match where they just break each other down and then, lead us to the big dramatic finish. That's what this was. And it was excellent. It was just excellent. It was another fantastic match. And the great part here is that Takeshita is working the abdomen. That's how he's breaking Kenny down because of the diverticulitis. Takeshita is like, doors wide open. I'm going to destroy this guy from the inside. Yeah, Don Callis on commentary saying that his insides could explode at any given moment. And Kenny is doing it on purpose to sell and oversell his stomach. And you're like, you've got the perfect storm here to create the great comebacks. even at some point, just slamming Kenny Omega against the side of a table that's sort of leaned on its side. You know what I'm talking about. You saw the spot. Slams him on top, belly first. You're like, oh no, Kenny, what the fuck are you doing? Don't do that to yourself, Kenny. And you're like, this is pro wrestling. I'm okay. He's okay. I'm okay. We're all okay. And they're bumping and they're so stiff with each other. They're just ramming into each other and hitting each other and striking. And this is so good. It's just so good. A gritty match. Lots of grit in a lot of these matches tonight as we keep moving forward here. And they build, like I said, it's a Japanese epic. They build to the big dramatic final third of the match where the strikes are fast and heavy and the power moves feel significant. They're dropping the big moves and you're like, oh yeah, okay, now this feels like the real deal. Stuffed pile drivers and poison ranas. And Don Callis gets involved in the end somewhat but has to relent. Okay. He tries to get involved, but he has to fall back because earlier in the match, while Takeshita was distracting the ref, he went after Kenny Omega and started punching him, and he punched him so hard he hurt his hand. Right. And we all saw that and we all had a good guffaw. You're like, what a jerk. Idiot Don Callis. And he's like, nah, I hurt my hand, and he's got his hand all twisted, like one of these, and he's holding on to it, and you're like, okay. But then it does come into play at the end when Callis tries to get involved, but it doesn't quite work out because his hand hurts. He tries to hold Kenny or whatever, and he can't. He's like, my fucking hand. So he can't get involved in the finish. Takeshita manages to wriggle out of the one-winged angel, and then they do a series of roll-ups. Schoolboys. Kenny gets the shock pinfall win, and he wins the championship. I love the finish. I love the finish to this match. I love this match. These are two of my favorite pro wrestlers. Omega's going to be an all-timer for me, and Takeshi's just tremendous. He's going to be such a loss for AEW when he goes to New Japan full time. Look, he dropped the look. I don't want to. Sometimes I see on the blue sky, I can see that like there's some people who aren't, who love the pro wrestling and don't, they're not in the weeds with the rumors and whatnot and how things go, and they're like, oh, this Takeshita kid is going to have a great future in AEW. And I'm like, are you sure about that? I'm not sure either. Don't get me wrong, but all signs point to him jumping to New Japan after his deal in AEW comes up. He's got his nice little contract with New Japan. He's the never open weight champion. He had a great G1 last year. They had him. They being New Japan, they booked him on 2 matches. They even booked him on Wrestle Kingdom, all right, to beat Shingo for the never open weight title. Like, they like the kid. They're rolling out the red carpet for him. They want him in the company. And as an avid New Japan watcher as well as AEW, I can say with much aplomb that New Japan is the company that needs Takeshita. They need him 100%, and they want him. They want this kid as part of the future, the fabric of their company, and I am okay with that. I'm okay with Takeshita. He is going to be such a bigger star there than he would be in North America, because I don't think Tony's going to fully commit to making him a superstar, which is okay, I guess. There's other choices and whatnot, but it's also wild as hell. But anyway, we're throwing in conversations that may not necessarily come into being, but let's revisit this in a couple of months, and I will gladly eat crow, take the L as the kids say, to if Takeshita does stick around AEW. But I legitimately would be surprised. I would be surprised, and I think and I think if he does leave, I think it's going to be one of these where, everyone's going to do it on a really good note. He's going to be very grateful to AEW, and AEW is going to be very thankful, and Tony Khan's going to wish him the best and whatnot. I think it's going to be one of these where everything is going to close up nice, because at the same time, he's going to your partner promotion, and it's not as if he disappears forever. And then Takeshita can come back and do some one shots. He can do some Forbidden Door stuff, reconnect with the AEW audience, who'll be super excited to see him back. There's a lot. There's a lot of good in all of this. Nonetheless, it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be one of these bitter ends. I think it's going to be fairly positive overall. If it does happen. So what did happen though was this incredible match that I'm giving 4 3/4 stars to. Just right up my alley, with two of my favorite pro wrestlers who delivered a fantastic match of just a nice little build crescendo war, which I was super into. I loved it. I thought it was tremendous. Next, why don't we talk about Will Ospreay versus Kyle Fletcher in the steel cage? This fucking rocked too. Look at the top of this card. I'm talking about them out of order. I'm sort of like doing like my favorite matches, and then my tippy top favorite matches. And Ospreay and Fletcher, man, what a fucking shot this was when this match started, with the two guys at the top of the cage, just sitting. They climbed to the top, sitting across from each other. It's just phenomenal stuff. Like, what a great shot. And this one also had the story to justify all the violence, right? And it starts off great with Will, intentionally flubbing a move because the cage is in the way, right? I think he was going to do like one of those handstand flips that he does, and he goes for the handstand, but then his foot hits the cage, indicating that, maybe Will Ospreay is at a disadvantage here, because the flips that he likes to sometimes entertain might not exactly go off his plan because of the cage. And I like that. That's something that permeated throughout the match as well. Great little note here. And look, they're both doing great moves. What do you want from me? Ospreay bleeds first after getting lawn darted into the cage, and he's grotesque as well. Will's a bleeder, and when he bleeds, I don't know what happened. Like, his eyes become so gleaming white. I don't know what it is, but it's probably just the contrast of the white against the red. But then again, it's like they just become absolutely wild, and he's doing Cactus Jack. He's doing some Cactus Jack homages, and it's just fantastic stuff. It's just legitimately fantastic stuff. And Fletcher bleeds as well. He gets thrown into the cage at some point, and he grates his hit. And again, like, this is something that I want to point out, because I pointed out in some of my WWE reviews when I talk about the steel cages, and I always shrug at the steel cages, because I'm like, for WWE, a steel cage is just a match within a cage, and the cage isn't really a thing. Here, they're using the cage as a weapon. They legitimately are. They're doing the lawn darts, and Fletcher is grating Will's head, his forehead against the cage. And I'm like, okay, this is great. Of course, he licks it. There's a lot of blood licking in this match. And I think we need to put a pin in that for a little while, because now it just comes across as gratuitous as opposed to shocking. Now it's just like, it doesn't have the same impact. It's like anything, the more you do it, diminishing returns, right? I think we're at the point where it's like, critical mass here. Let's just stop doing that for a while at the very least. They all saw a Hangman drink Strickland's blood, and everyone's like, "Oh my fucking god!" And then it's like, I can do that too. Fletcher always also does a brain buster on a standing chair, and then of course, the Styles Clash on fucking thumbtacks, which is the sickest thing I ever saw. I don't think I've ever seen that. I don't think I've ever seen anyone take a Styles Clash on thumbtacks, and it is the most disgusting thing. It truly is. Fletcher is such a maniac. Can you imagine having all those tacks sticking into your no-nos? I couldn't do it. After a certain while, there's certain things that maybe when you're younger, you see someone get kicked in the balls and then you go, oh, and you relate, you're like, oh. As you get older, you're like, you're sort of more in tune with the pain or what it represents. And you're like, yeah, that fucking sucks. But you don't like feel it as much. Does that make sense? You don't like connect with it as much. I connected with the pain of thumbtacks being, poking into my dick. And I was like, no, I didn't have to feel that. Thank you, Kyle Fletcher. That was unnecessary, but awesome. And of course, the Spanish fly off the top of the cage was absolutely fucking terrifying, just terrifying. And I think the audience was terrified as well. And then followed by a little later, shortly thereafter, we get a hidden blade after Kyle Fletcher just repeatedly tells Will Ospreay, "I hate you, I fucking hate you." And then Ospreay lands the Tiger Driver 91 for the win. Tremendous match. I have quibbles. Oh, I do have quibbles in regards to this match. Quibbles that kept me from really going higher on this score because I thought this was a really good match. The first one is I think Will Ospreay has to start being careful of his epics. Okay, Will does epic matches. He has the epic structure and he likes these very dramatic epics. And I think he has to start being careful of just how far these go before they become insufferable or repetitive or a combination of both. Not everything has to be war and peace, to quote a former AEW pro wrestler. You can just go in there and have a really meaningful match without having to go through, Homer's Odyssey in the meantime. So I think that's my first and it's a minor quibble, but one which I'm like, okay, I hope Will just learns how to taper these things. Because look, there's a degree where I'm like, Will Ospreay doesn't even need these types of epics because he's legitimately one of the greatest wrestlers to ever do it. So he can do what he needs to do and we'll be fine, Don't get me wrong. Like, I like the epics, but they don't have, pull them out once a year or so, if they're, if we see them too often, again, it's diminishing returns. But tiny minor quibble. People breaking into a fucking steel cage. I am so sick of this bullshit. And this is not just AEW. This is everywhere. It's everywhere at this point. The fucking idea of having a fucking cage match is to lock the fucking door so that no one can get in or out. Specifically in. Okay? That's the idea. But no, like, it doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter anymore because now it's just like, well, the cage doesn't matter. The cage doesn't matter. Just, forfeit the cage. Who cares? Make it a DQ. It doesn't matter. It doesn't fucking matter. Because Mark Davis got in, brought his bolt cutters. I'm like, what the fuck are we doing again? And there was a time in this company, I would have be sitting here and talking about, the upcoming matches and so on and so forth. I would be previewing the show, and I would outright tell people, I would outright tell you, no, AEW doesn't do this kind of shit. They're not going to have people go into the cage. And that era's finished. That era's done. Now it's just like, if someone needs to get in, they'll get in. They have all this security to break people up from fighting all the time. Can't they have some of that security to run down to the ring and keep someone with fucking bolt cutters from interfering in the fucking match? Which is supposed to be, a feud ending one-on-one inside a cage, no interference. We got to settle this once and for all kind of thing. I don't know. So Mark Davis gets in and he throws in a bag with all sorts of stuff in there, barbed wire bats and, all sorts of junk. And that really pissed me off. And then eventually Davis does get into the cage, and then gets kicked out. And then they lock the cage. I'm like, why didn't you lock the cage back up after Davis dropped the bag of goodies? No, they had to wait till he does another interference. I'm like, all of this just like annoys me to no degree. It annoys me to no degree. And that took me away from a lot of enjoyment of this match. And the other thing, the last quibble, this match went too long. It went too long. And I think this kind of ties into my will be careful of the epics, thing. I think you could have shaved 5-6 minutes off of this and you would have got the same result. And especially earlier in the evening when I saw two women who were on this, whose characters in kayfabe had the same level of hate that Ospreay and Fletcher had for each other. But the women were so much more successful with 10 minutes left. How many? 28, almost 29 minutes. Ospreay and Fletcher went, and the women just under 13. So with 16 minutes less, I think Toni Storm and Mariah May were more successful at delivering what they wanted to deliver, the level of violence they wanted to deliver. I think they were far more successful. I think this went too long. You could have shaved easily 5, 6, 7 minutes off of this, and you would have had the same result. And it would have been just as compelling. I think the nonsense with the screwdriver was too much, for instance, especially since I don't know if anyone's talked about this, but can you explain why Don Callis hid a screwdriver at the top of the cage, but then while knowing that Mark Davis was going to run in with a big bag of shit? I don't understand why these two things existed in this match. I don't understand it. But again, these are quibbles. But they are quibbles that brought the match down for me. Not down to the point where I'm like, what a disappointment, etc., etc. But, a match which could have potentially been a match of the year candidate is not, for all of those little annoying reasons. I'm still, I'd still give this a 4.5 out of 5, which is an excellent score, don't get me wrong, because these guys just tore at each other and worked way too hard. The work was all there. It's all, the match structure made it a little too long, and, the fucking bursting into the cage. Moratorium on that. Moratorium. AEW, for God's sake, let cage matches be cage matches. Stop having people break in and do shit. It's so annoying. It is so annoying. And against the idea of wanting a cage match in the first place. So can we please stop? Thank you. But hey, 4.5 out of 5. I'm here complaining, and we just had, another excellent match. Let's go back to the beginning of the card, like an hour and 30 minutes into this or so. And we still, well, the rest I wager we're going to go a little faster here. Adam Page defeated MJF at the in the opener. Look, hard-hitting, snappy, roughneck match. I enjoyed this so much. Again, like I talked about in the preview, two guys, and also what we mentioned earlier in the evening, right? Two guys that the audience wants to see, right? They're booking two guys that AEW fans want to see wrestle. But on top of that, they're in the spots that people want them to be in. Hangman Page the babyface, MJF the shit bastard heel. That's how we want those two. And I'm okay with that. I am 100 okay with that. I think it legitimately rules. So this was hard-hitting, such a strong match. Later in the match, Hangman does a buckshot, and MJF holds on to the ropes, and then that leads to them going to the floor, where MJF does, I don't know, like a running tombstone right onto an upright chair, which is sick as hell. That's a disgustingly dangerous move. Like the chair is unfolded, upright, not just like, leaning against something. No, like on the seat of the chair. And he just sort of runs and sort of hops with Hangman in the tombstone position. It's just like, oh my God, Jesus fucking Christ, what am I looking at? And then we get the Angel's Wings spot from Hangman where MJF just lands fucking face first. So welcome to the King's Road, MJF. And then the buckshot follows and Hangman gets the win. I love this match. And I'm also very excited at the prospect of these two guys fulfilling their roles as the two main characters of AEW. This was like MJF said when he did his return. He said that he was not going to be the good guy anymore. It wasn't going to be about love. It was going to be about hate. And that's what this build was about. Another fantastic build, by the way, right? Just exquisite. Great. So well done by two guys who know how to do it. Simple, no bullshit wrestling, a no bullshit wrestling angle from two extremely talented guys who can get it over. And it was all full of hate. Just because MJF hates Hangman because, the audience likes Hangman and MJF's just an insecure little piece of shit, right? And it's tremendous. It's absolutely tremendous. So it's exactly what MJF said he was going to do when he returned. Make his feuds and what he's going to do all about hate. And I'm going to tell you, I hope this feud falls into this feud must continue category. I hope it's not a blow off. This is what I'm hoping for. Because listen, I'm trying to say too many things at once. Listen. MJF lost clean as a sheet. Something that Adam Copeland could not do. MJF, look, can bullshit all you want about MJF. You can say whatever you want. But this guy knows and he understands when it's time to do the deed. And he understands that he, as a guy who is going to be with this company for a few years still, that he's better off having, beloved babyface Hangman Adam Page as a rival and as a guy who he feels, or as a guy that can stand up to MJF. He's better off having that guy around. So having him losing to Hangman ultimately is a good thing for MJF because they can circle back to this, as I think they should, very soon, and have MJF go after Hangman and beat him and probably have to use the diamond ring and what other nonsense he can come up with to win the match. Because MJF is, he's a son of a bitch. Which would then lead us to a nice blow-off a nice violent blow-off match at All In. How about that? I think sometimes this shit books itself. Sometimes. I think there's a lot of juice in this one here. And starting off with Hangman winning clean. And look, this was essential for Hangman. He had been, doesn't have a good record as a heel. I think that's part of the idea, that he's finding his feet again. He's reconnecting with who he is. So he's going to get back into the saddle, which is cowboy, Warren. But he's going to get back into a spot, and he'll be able to move forward with he'll be able to move forward with some confidence. Now, he wins in front of the crowd. People love it. They love the Hangman. Now your Hangman is back to his winning ways. Things are all falling back into place. This is so well done. I don't know what to tell you. This is also well done, and this feud must continue. This feud must continue. 4 stars for me. I thought it was a fantastic opener. Just fantastic. Great. Mercedes Moné defeated Momo Watanabe in another good, hard-hitting match. Oh my God, these strikes, they were laying into each other. And what I liked about this match is that both of these women were smart enough to understand what this crowd wanted. We're not gonna beat around the bush. We're not gonna try and kid ourselves. Momo was not over. Okay? People are not familiar with her. I know she appeared a couple of times in a couple of very awkward segments on AEW television, but these people did not know who Momo Watanabe was for the life of them. Okay? They just didn't know. They were not invested in this. But you know what they did? They beat the shit out of each other. And that's something anyone can get into. You might not be invested in who these people are, but by the time this match was over, people were into it because they were beating the piss out of each other. Especially that one kick that got Mercedes right under the chin. Jesus Christ. That got the crowd involved. And we spoke earlier about Moxley and Cope sticking to the game plan, right? It's nope, we're going to do what we're going to do, and whatever happens, happens, right? No. I've already said my piece. I was about to bury it some more, but it's fine. Let's move. Let's just, instead of reiterating, let's move forward. But, the point being is that they stuck to the game plan. Here, it kind of felt like they had a game plan. But early enough in the match, they felt it wasn't going quite their way. And look, I don't know if it's Mercedes who took control of the situation or whatnot, but it was okay, you got to kick the shit out of me now, right? Just go for it. Because, Momo was playing babyface, which was odd because she's part of one of the worst heel well, when I say worst, terrible, just bad, heels. It's a heel faction. I'm not saying that they're a bad faction. I'm saying they're a faction of bad people. Of heels. They're a faction of heels. So she's we're not quite used to seeing her do the babyface role, but that's what she was doing here. And she just went right for it. So again, I don't know if this is them changing the game plan early on and Mercedes look, just beat me up and follow me, kind of thing. Because she was Mercedes just allowed herself to get the tar beat out of her in this match. Brutal, fierce, Mercedes eating all the shit that Momo was dishing out. And, but Mercedes gets the win to no one's surprise, really. She gets the win with the Money Maker and the Bank Statement. I thought it was terrific. A terrific match. I give it 3 3/4 stars. Fantastic stuff. Next, we had Swerve Strickland defeating Ricochet to become the AEW #1 contender. To become the #1 contender to the AEW World Title. That was an awful entrance, right? The drummer. I mean, poor guy. I'm sure it's his in-ear that was completely fucked. It had to be. Otherwise, that guy is the absolute dirt worst drummer I have ever heard. But him coming down, playing the rhythm section to Swerve's theme, but being off, just created a cacophony of sound, and it was like, oh my God, this is untenable. This is awful. But I can only assume that's it. This was another tremendous match. It's also one where we saw a lot of celebrities. They did a lot of the celebrity stuff. You know, in the pre-show, we're going to touch on the pre-show, but they had the Righteous Gemstone guys. They had Adam Devine, right? That's his name. I know him from the Workaholics, and I watched him stand up with him with Kristen. I think he had a stand-up special on Netflix. I didn't think his stand-up was really funny. To my memory, because I'm trying to remember, I think he resorted to a lot of, goofy faces and, just being overboard, very clown-like. It's not quite my speed, but I thought it was funny in Workaholics. I haven't watched The Righteous Gemstones, so I know. And another guy from The Righteous Gemstones, which apparently is a very funny show. So maybe I should watch it. It's the final season, right? But in this match, we got, Leslie Jones was there, and she was going completely bonkers for Swerve on this one. Like, she was just like going completely out of her mind for this match, which was tremendous. We had Ken John, of course, who was there. When I say of course, well, he's a big pro wrestling fan. The SummerSlam, the Summerfest, right? The Summerfest, if you recall. That wasn't him. It was the other guy, but he was involved in that promo with John Cena. So Ken John was there. Former LA Laker Michael Cooper was there. I think I saw Ron Funches, right? I think he was there. And was there. There's probably others that I just didn't know who they were. I mean, to be perfectly honest, it's, I asked, it's like, who's the guy? Who's the guy, the tall guy in the suit? Oh, that's Michael Cooper. He's a former player for the Lakers. I'm like, oh, okay, thanks. It's like, all right. So then I can drop this in my review and everyone's like, ooh, Warren has such knowledge on so many subjects. I have approximate knowledge of many things. There's issues with the robe, of course, in the match. If we get to the match, of course, there's all, the issues that we've that have been permeating this feud with Ricochet stealing Nana's robe, and we get some fantastic pro wrestling. Again, just like, it's great pro wrestling, so very sharp, very snappy, very good. They're professionals doing professional wrestling. Northern Lights into a brain buster by Ricochet at some point. He does a 630 senton as well. Swerve earlier in the match, he does this great power sequence where he lifts Ricochet up from a power bomb after doing a power bomb, holds on, lifts him up, and flips him into a slam, which was just tremendous stuff. There's some scary spots in this match. The Poison Rana on the apron, that came close. You don't have much margin for error, and we were looking at the margin. And of course, the tope, the Swerve tope that where Ricochet caught him into the DVD, sort of like quick on his feet, turned it into a DVD. I don't know what it was supposed to do, what they were trying to do. I don't know if that was the plan, but boy, he almost fucking dropped Swerve on his head. Tremendous spot because of it, but very scary at the same time. Nana at some point, he leaves the match because he's trying to get Swerve under control, and Swerve pushes him away. And Nana's like, fuck this shit. And he walks away. But eventually he does come back to the match, and there's some more shenanigans with the robe. But Swerve is able to get the upper hand, lands a house call, and the big pressure for the win. Yeah, I mean, that was, it was just a fantastic match. Just a fantastic match. That was really, really good. And another fantastic build that deserved this great match. And you see, like, again, if you want to compare with the main event, if you want, of course, we hadn't gone through the gauntlet of super ultra violent matches that we got later on, but these guys dug deep and brought a conclusion to their feud that was as meaningful as the build was. Ultimately, why didn't I say that earlier? I feel like I danced around trying to find the right words, but that's exactly what this is the extent of my feeling. I just figured it out. Now, the conclusion to the feud was as meaningful as the build. So that was tremendous. And I had also predicted, I had called it, saying, look, I think if Swerve wins this match, I think Mox retains. I called it. And I think it was hard to really say, oh, well, I think Adam Copeland's going to win. I think that, but I think once you get Swerve locked in, it becomes much less probable that he's going to be fighting another babyface. And quite frankly, a match with Mox is probably the best thing right now for Mox to finally fight someone cool and that people actually do perceive as a threat to Jon Moxley. So, I mean, Swerve, God, man, he's so cool. He's so cool. It's hard to imagine, like just about a year ago, right? We had people going on the internet saying, oh, he's not booked like a big deal. AEW doesn't make him feel like always finding the fucking, the fucking little nitpicks, even if they don't watch the show, they're just going to find anything to bitch about. Now you cannot say that. Every time Swerve Strickland hits the TV screen, he looks, acts, and feels like a big deal. And he's promoted like a big deal. What a fucking success story this is for AEW. Like, we love to hammer home. When I say we, sure, you can throw me into this as well. We love to hammer home when Tony Khan fumbles the ball. He fumbled the ball on Ricky Starks, fumbled the ball on Rey Fenix. No one's saying that he's been spot on with Swerve Strickland. No one talks about how Tony Khan hired this guy and earmarked him from the start. Because you can go back and you can see how this guy was booked, how he was being handled. Tony earmarked this guy for big things. He's like, I'm going to make a star out of you. And he made a star out of him. Of course, Swerve has all the naturals. I've been crowing for Swerve Strickland as a world champion for years. For years. And he was in the star-making organization. He was in the star-making organization, wasn't he? And what did they do? They fired his ass. What does he do? He goes to the other place. He's given the opportunities because the boss sees it. The boss fucking sees it. He looks at him and he's like, this guy rules. This guy is my guy. Hell, you can go back and listen to tape of my old Dynamite reviews. And I'm here talking about when Cody's leaving. I'm saying, hey, you know what? If you still have a reality show you need to do, you do a reality show with Swerve. If Swerve wants to do it, of course. But he's a perfect shoo-in, perfect candidate to be a face of the company, to get that, to create that connection with the audience. And it'll be with an entirely different audience than what Cody would bring in. They haven't listened to that so far, but they ended up listening to me and making this guy world champion. And he's still right there in the mix. He's still right back there. And we'll talk. We're going to have all the time in the world to talk about Swerve versus Mox. But I'll be damned if Swerve is not one of the best reasons to watch AEW. And you know what? Look, so is Ricochet. So was Ricochet. This criminally, I sort of touched on this on the preview, and I'm going to say it again here, just to make sure that my point is hammered home and that it, more people hear it. Ricochet is a guy who came in and wanted to prove what he's capable of doing. Wanted to show that he wasn't just, a normal average guy who couldn't really talk. He decided to try out new things. And this heel persona that he has is so good. He is so good in this role. It is preposterous. To the point that I think he could be in any type of program right now. And he would be a credible, sniveling heel that I just want to see. I just want to see him get beat up every week now. It's so good. The work he's been doing has been tremendous. And not enough people are talking about it. And I think the reason why is because inevitably what you have to do when you talk about how good he is and how no one ever saw this coming is because you have to look at everybody's favorite promotion right now and say some bad things about them. You have to say, well, they fumbled Ricochet. And a lot of people don't want to talk about that. A lot of people don't want to say that kind of thing. A lot of people don't want to see the reality of it. But ultimately, WWE never gave him a chance. I don't think they wanted to give him a chance. They had pigeonholed him in whatever slot they had seen. They saw fit. And Ricochet saw that. He was like, no, I'm good. I'm out of here. Sure, he re-signed a couple of times. Once, I think. But the second time around, he's like, nope. I'm going to try other things. Fumble. Ricochet's work is phenomenal. It is absolutely phenomenal. And that's on the other place. That is absolutely on the other place. If they weren't able to tap into what this guy has, that's on them. That's entirely on them. 4.5 stars from me on that one as well. And is that it? 4.5? Hang on a second. Yeah. 4.5 stars for that one as well. And then we had Kazuchika Okada retain the AEW Continental title against Brody King. Another strong, stiff, brutal match with Okada getting the piss beat out of him by Brody King. And when this match is done, Okada's chest is blistering. His biceps are cut up. It's a brutal fight. And I love it. I just love it. And the formula was very simple. It was Kazuchika Okada getting beaten senseless by Brody King, who's in control for the majority of the match. And Okada just got destroyed. How much offense did he take? It was just crazy. But eventually, towards the end, Okada lands a surprise drop kick to get things going back his way and lands the Rainmaker for the win. I don't have many notes on this. This was straightforward, but it was great. Tremendous fight. I loved it. 4 stars for me. Again, just like absolutely amazing stuff. And then, what if we roll through the roll through the pre-show real quick? Hologram and Commander defeated Blake Christian and Lee Johnson in a nice little, opener, which was a lot of fun. Apparently, there were some representatives from CMLL and New Japan in the audience specifically to get a look at Lee Johnson. And I can see Lee Johnson heading out, doing a tour, maybe, getting some action in on the Best of Super Juniors, stretching his legs a bit. Lee Johnson's very good. I'd be in for that. That'd be really cool. Then we had Daniel Garcia and the Undisputed Kingdom defeating all of Shane Taylor Promotions, which is of course Shane Taylor, Lee Moriarty, and the Infantry, which was good little match, and it extends the tension between Adam Cole and Daniel Garcia for the TNT title. We see the Ops in a skybox. I forgot to mention, because we also see them in the main event at some point. The Ops, they're in a skybox chilling out. Then we had Chris Jericho versus Gravity in a match that never happened, because Jericho comes in and starts swinging his bat at Gravity before the match starts, and Aubrey Edwards throws the match. And then that drags out Bandito, because Bandito is Gravity's brother, and this feud must continue. So, you know, the learning tree beat up on Bandito, and then Jericho unmasks Gravity, which of course in Lucha Libre is something you don't do. And for some reason, the mother, Bandito and Gravity's mother and sister, are in the audience, and they hop the barricade to come and protect their children, protect their children. And Bandito tries to protect his family, you know, everyone. They're all on the ground while Jericho stands over them with a bat, you know, menacing to do whatever. And, you know, be rest assured that the symbolism of Chris Jericho threatening a Mexican family is not lost on me. And then we get the main event of the pre-show, where Big Boom AJ, I still cannot but call him the Costco guy. That's what he is. He's the Costco guy. And Mark Briscoe and Orange Cassidy defeated Johnny TV and MXM Collection. Look, fine little match. Crowd was into it. Everyone enjoyed it. Rizzler came out dressed like Orange Cassidy to a big reaction. Everyone thought that was awesome. And there's really not much anything else. You know, Costco guy said on the press conference, the post-show presser, that he was under contract with AEW. Whoopee. I mean, you know, good for them. I don't know. What do you want from me? You know, I feel like I like to hang on. I follow internet culture, and and whatnot. And I kind of feel like the Costco guy's aura is already, you know, it's dipped. It has already dipped, and we're not even at the tail end. You know, we're heading down the roller coaster, and we're sort of running out of momentum to really like get us over the next hump. There's probably some wackadoo metric that Tony has access to that shows that this is successful. I don't see it. I don't get it. But what I do get is that this is the end of the review for AEW Revolution 2025. Look, a terrific show. I know I spent a lot of time talking about the main event. I think we needed to break that down, even though I really didn't like it. But hopefully you also understand that there is a lot of great on this show. And, you know, unfortunately, that's just how things go with main events. The main event will leave you with your final impression, and will leave you with a good or a bad taste in your mouth. That's just inevitable at this point. That's always how it goes. You know, if the rest of the show was terrible, but you had a good main event, you'd have another vision, right? So I think ultimately it taints a lot of what people feel about the show, but I also think it's very unfair because this show was tremendous. There's just too much great stuff on this show to just be poo-pooed away just for the sake of one match. Yes, it's the main event, but goddamn, I'll stick up for this show anytime, anywhere. All of this was great. And you were great. And that about does it for another edition of the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. Thank you, everyone, for listening and hanging out till the very end. I appreciate that tremendously. One more pitch for a like or a review or a rating on wherever you have decided to listen to the Mr. Warren Hayes Show. That would be tremendous, and I appreciate it a great deal. I, of course, will be back tomorrow with another AEW Dynamite review and streaming. You know, I stream 3 times in a week over on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes. They're always a good time. The streams are always fun, and we'd love to have you with us. So be sure to be there with us, hanging out and enjoying, you know, just talking about pro wrestling and stuff, and a lot of other stuff too. They're good times. So if you want to do that, it's on youtube.com/MrWarrenHayes. Love to have you there. Would love to have you in the Discord. The link is in the description. I think I went through everything. I think we're good. Why don't we call it a night? Thank you again, everyone, for joining me. Go watch some Randy Orton and get back to me. And I'll see you next time.